On September 2nd, 2020, we would witness a moment that would single-handedly change hockey history. A freak incident that would change the entire trajectory of an NHL franchise. A franchise who's on the cusp of a potential dynasty.
Concern as Landeskog is hobbled as he heads to the dressing room.
Have to think that potentially that could be a cut on the right leg of Landeskog.
Heading into the 2020 season, the Colorado Avalanche felt different. Nathan MacKinnon around this time went from being a disappointing first overall pick to being on pace for a career high 110 points.
The net for Miss Voigt. His ability to edge right there, motion, that is almost impossible. He is cutting in with such torque.
Price works it in. Godfrey MacKinnon shoots and scores! Justice is served!
Mikko Rantanen had broken out into a star.
Plays in the slot, scores!
Rookie Cale Makar would break onto the scene, already proving to be one of the best defensemen in the game.
Makar jumps in, moves it and shoots. Cale Makar! Welcome to the National Hockey League!
Not only did this team have star power, including one of the best centers, wingers, defensemen in the game, not only did they have depth from the Kadri, Burakovsky, Valeri Nichushkin acquisitions, but they had one of the best leaders in Gabriel Landeskog, as his calm demeanor, combined with the fiery passion of MacKinnon, was a recipe for a dynasty. Two opposite leaders that can motivate the entire team in their own ways. Because keep in mind, just 3 years prior, the Avalanche had one of the worst seasons in NHL history. After years of MacKinnon not making the playoffs, this man was ready. In round 1, they would decisively eliminate the In round 2, they would meet the Dallas Stars.
Game 6 in Edmonton is underway.
As Dallas' season was punching far beyond their weight class, as this wasn't the Dallas team we see today. No, this was the start of the Dallas team we see today. As this team didn't have a single point-per-game player, Jason Robertson was still in the minors, Y. Johnson had yet to be drafted, Sagan and Ben had disappointing regular seasons, Miro Heiskanen had broken out, but wasn't the star player we see today. Their only saving grace was the godlike seasons from Hudobin and Ben Bishop.
Nice move and a shot by Svechnikov, then a rebound and sprawling out.
Yet, they would decisively take Game 1 and 2 from the Avs.
5 straight goals, and the Dallas Stars win 5-2 and lead the series 2-0.
But with the leadership of Landeskog and MacKinnon, this team would make a comeback. If they go down 3-0, this series is over. But Colorado would push the series to Game 6, where the incident would happen.
He's able to cover that up. Here's the injury to Landeskog. And when Makar goes down, it comes around and right there.
Today's video is brought to you by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is a high-quality meal kit service that makes it easier than ever to hit your nutrition goals. Their delicious recipes feature produce sourced directly from Canadian farmers, picked at peak ripeness. It goes from farm to table in under a week, which means that the menus feature the season's freshest flavors. On today's menu, we have the Spanish-inspired chorizo and chickpea stew. How well can I replicate this? Watch and find out. Enjoy cost certainty with HelloFresh. No surprise price hikes like the store. Choose from weekly recipes, get pre-portioned ingredients, and cook up a homemade feast in no time. It's comfort, convenience, and value all in one. From 20-minute meals to hearty winter favorites, HelloFresh makes cooking from home simple and satisfying. Okay, here's the final product. And honestly, this was my favorite dish yet. I'm not joking when I say that HelloFresh single-handedly sparked a new passion for cooking for me. And if you click the link down below, get up to 20 meals for free, plus free sides for life and free shipping on your first order at hellofresh.ca using code RTH. Offers for new and returning subscribers who've been canceled for more than 270 days. That's 20 meals free, plus free sides for life at hellofresh.ca using code RTH. What do you think of freak career-altering moments? I think about Scott Stevens hitting Korea, Scott Stevens hitting Eric Lindros. Scott Stevens was an absolute menace, like what the hell? If you want to find some absolutely bizarre examples, I would then point out a player like Bo Bennett, who would injure himself from a goal celebration, which would lead to him retiring from hockey. But as for Landeskog, a man who hasn't played in 3 years, his career would be ended by a teammate, because after going up 2-1 in the second period, the Avs were battling for a puck in their zone after a close call for Dallas, and after Makar fell down in the corner, Makar's leg would rise in the air just as Landeskog was skating towards the puck carrier. Did you catch that? This is hands down one of the biggest freak accidents I have ever seen from the game of hockey, as Makar's skate would go up and perfectly cut his quadricep. So just a tendon that holds together the kneecap, which kind of holds together the whole operation, because if Makar's skate was even just a couple centimeters higher, Landeskog just gets a cut on the knee. Nothing serious, and his career does not end. Well, at least for this time frame. But it didn't. Where not only was he done for the game, no, he was done for the playoffs and required surgery. Because here's the crazy part. Colorado this game would crush Dallas. They would still nearly win the series, but they would lose in overtime, as Dallas would make it to the Stanley Cup final, and Colorado, well, they were golfing. And let's not get it twisted. Landeskog was not the best player on Colorado. He's not the leading assist guy or goal scorer. But to say that Colorado's chances were hurt without him is an understatement. Because to better understand how good Landeskog is, let's take a look at this play from a prior game. Off the faceoff, Landeskog ties up his man to gain body position in front of the net, as he is the definition of a power forward who can outmuscle 95% of the league, as his net front presence is invaluable, as he outpowers the Dallas defender to the extent that by the time he gets past Landeskog, Rantanen is left wide open. Landeskog then circles the net and starts a net front battle with Esa Lindell. Esa Lindell is a 6'3", 225-pound defenseman who is getting manhandled by Landeskog, where Makar's left wide open and blasts a one-timer, as this goal was single-handedly created by Landeskog, and the man never touched the puck. Yes, you need your goal scorers, McKinnon, Makar, so add in a guy who can manipulate an entire power play without ever touching the puck. That right there is a recipe for a Stanley Cup. With that being said, after numerous tweaks, injuries, surgeries, Landeskog was in and out of the lineup for the next 2 seasons. At least he was able to help push Colorado to their Stanley Cup in 2022. However, he was not right, as he lost all movement in his knee as he was playing through debilitating pain. And right after the cup run, the news would break. Landeskog would undergo a complete knee reconstruction, because here's where things get tricky. Knee reconstruction is a very serious procedure that can single-handedly end a player's season. I had the exact same surgery from playing hockey. It ended my career, but I'm not an NHL player with instant access to the best doctors in the world, as we have seen countless players come back from this surgery. McDavid had the same injury. He didn't get surgery, but he would come back with his 150-point season. His knee was so mangled that he would then require a cartilage transplant. And this right here is where the situation single-handedly tanked any hope of Colorado repeating as champions, or they had a real shot of forming into the NHL's newest dynasty. Because when we see other teams like Vegas, Mark Stone, utilize long-term injury reserve for cap circumvention, teams can gain a massive advantage if this happens earlier on in a season. Now, this topic is very confusing, so I'll try my best to simplify it, but the reason why fans are so upset when a team like Vegas seemingly always has a top star require surgery is that they can then accrue salary cap space. Okay, so imagine a player makes $10 million per season. That player then gets injured in preseason, and his surgery timeline is exactly halfway through the season. So, the 41-game mark. Okay, so now imagine to start the season, his team had exactly 0 cap space. Because that player was on long-term injury reserve for 41 games, which is half the season, that team would then gain $5 million in accrued cap space. At that point, they can use that cap space to acquire a big piece of the trade deadline and help cement their playoff run. And keep in mind, this is a very simplified interpretation on how this works, and by no means is it this basic or exact, one-to-one cap savings. But basically, if a player is on LTIR, that team will slowly begin to accrue cap space, which they can use to acquire players. If they start the season with 0 cap, and their whole team is healthy, they will not have the cap space. So you can imagine how this could be a massive advantage for creating depth, as some teams strategically plan for surgeries, knowing that they can still make the playoffs without a star player. Right at the end of the season, boom, inject that star player back into the roster, while at the same time getting cap space to make a trade. It's the same reason to why so many teams are constantly sending players up and down from the minors. Maybe they won't even play in the minors, but temporarily sending them down will mean that they begin to accrue cap space. When Mark Stone went on LTIR back in 2023, Vegas would accrue enough cap space to add on Ivan Barbashev and Teddy Bluger, players that would push their depth to the next level. The next season, they were able to add Thomas Hertl, Noah Hannafin. So this is a great strategy, specifically for the teams who know that that star player will return later in the year. But what happens when you don't know if a player is returning? Because for the case of Colorado, the Landeskog injury would create cap hell throughout the last 3 years. Yes, the Avalanche have been gaining cap space due to Landeskog being on LTIR. However, they can't necessarily spend it if they don't know if Landeskog is returning, or at the very least the guys they can acquire are ones with smaller salaries who are on an expiring contract. So unless Colorado is telling Landeskog, hey buddy, you're not allowed to return to the roster this year, which is very illegal, they can't do anything. They can't commit to a big trade. On top of that, adding back their captain and one of the top stars back into the lineup without having to trade any assets is still the best option. Because of this, their depth has fallen off a cliff, which would lead to the departure restructure of Kadri, Comfer, and free agency, the turbulent timeline of Valerie Nichushkin, they lose Darcy Kemper, and the loss of their captain is the cherry on top. As this team went from being one of the deepest teams, both on their blue line and forward core, to a shell of their former self. This team had a legitimate chance at forming a dynasty, especially when their star players always show up to big games.
Holtz looks into the slot. Shot blocked away. Another shot. Score! McKinnon. He scores! Oh my goodness gracious me!
Because of their lack of depth and salary cap, it would also handcuff them into trading Mikko Rantanen in one of the biggest trades we've seen in decades. If Landeskog is in the lineup and this team is playing extremely well, I seriously doubt that there's any chance that they feel the need to trade Mikko, which has then created a domino effect where Mikko is now in the West and may just face off against his prior team in the playoffs. So just the worst case Ontario for Colorado. As all these events were rooted from a freak accident that created a domino effect in a star player having to sit in the stands for 3 years. An accident that has not only changed the trajectory of a billion-dollar team, no, it would change hockey history. As not very often do you see a 50-goal scorer on 3 different teams in a month. In fact, I feel like this has never happened. A player who just might cement Dallas a cup win in a scenario where he has to match up against his former team. I'd really appreciate ya if you left a like on this video. And a big shout out to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Go check out the link down below. And as always, thanks for watching.